and we just happened to move there later on. But and we do have 2 other kids. Our daughter Robin was 2 years older than Lane, and our son Cody that's here is 5 years younger. And the movie didn't tell about that either. But anyway, when we were there in Utah, we had a dairy, and Clyde and I did the milking while the kids fed the calves on the bottle. And Robin would complain that she had to feed more calves than Lane because he was so slow. And so Clyde figured out why he was so slow. We had an old corral there, and he just found an old panel that he tied up to make kind of a V, and he run one of those calves in there and put a stick behind them so they wouldn't back out, put a string around them, and then he'd kick that panel out of the way and try to get those calves to buck. Well, this one particular day, Clyde had a dog with him that worked pretty good, and Lane didn't know he was anywhere around, but that calf was just standing there doing nothing, and Clyde quietly said sick him to his dog, and so his dog got on that calf before he bucked and bellered, and Lane hit the dirt, and he got up and realized what had happened, and he said, "Oh, Dad, that was fun. Let's do that again." Anyway, Clyde finally built him a little bucking chute to put those calves in, and when the neighbor kids come over, he'd play cars and trucks with them for a while, and then he'd tell them how much fun it was to ride these calves. And he loved putting his equipment on them and telling them how and stuff. You know, he was kind of a teacher at heart. But about the second time that they bit the dirt, they wasn't so keen on it. But they seemed to enjoy helping Lane get the calves back in and working them again. Anyway, so as he got older, I had a little gear bag for him to keep his stuff in. And when like a birthday or Christmas would come along, he didn't want toys like most kids. He wanted a hat or boots or spurs or a bull rope or something that had to do with bull riding. And so I made him a little gear bag to put all that stuff in, and it didn't matter where we were going, he took that with him, because he always said, well, we might be somewhere where I could get on something. So we went to a little rodeo, like I say, we were living in Utah around the Uinta Basin, and we went over to Rangeley, Colorado to the rodeo, and a friend of ours had the stock there, and so as soon as we got there, Lane went to his dad and said, go ask Johnny if he's got something I can get on. And so Johnny said, yeah, he had a bull that wouldn't hook or anything, and he'd let Lane make an exhibition ride on it. He was about 8 or 9 years old at the time. And so I thought sure it would be a steer or a small bull or something, but it wasn't. It was a big old Charolais bull, and he made a good ride on him. The crowd just went wild because he was so little, but he got off away from his hand and he hung up, and so he was dangling along on the side of this bull. He was short enough that there wasn't really any danger of getting hurt, but it scared me to death. And so the guys ran out there and got him, and he came over and sat down by me, and he said, boy, I'm not going to do that anymore. And I thought, good, we got this bull riding thing out of his system. So on the way home, I told Clyde, I said, Lane said he wasn't going to ride bulls anymore. And he said, Mom, I didn't mean that. I meant I wasn't going to hang up anymore. Anyway, as he got a little older, there was hardly any youth rodeos there in Utah. There was a few Little Britches rodeos, but most of them were high school or college. Of course, he wasn't old enough to ride in those, so we talked about moving because it was cold there, and Clyde, the cold bothers Clyde, and of course he had to be out in it all the time because we run cattle and stuff. And so we decided to move to a warmer climate, and he had rodeoed down in this area quite a bit with Freckles Brown, and they were really good friends of ours. So he came down and stayed with Freckles and Edith and looked around and found a place down at Paris, Texas that he kind of liked, and one someplace else, and this one. And so I flew down then and met him and to look at him and see what one. Anyway, we picked this one at Plain, Oklahoma. Like I say, I think that was a God thing, but anyway, so we moved down here, and there was a lot to be done on this place. Most of it had been cleared, but it hadn't been picked up. There was a lot of chunks and stuff that needed to be picked up, and so there was a lot of work to be done, and we were poor. We thought we were going to get some money out of a place in Utah to help pay for this place, and we didn't. The guy died, and we could have sued his wife, but she didn't have the money and wouldn't have done a bit of good, and she was a friend of ours. And so anyway, the kids had to work hard. Clyde taught our kids to work hard and get up early and get things done. And then if we had time, we'd take them to a buck out or a play day or something, And Robin rodeoed too. She did all the girls' events, but she was a senior in high school when we moved down here, and Lane was a freshman in high school. And so anyway, that very first summer, we went to a little rodeo up by Hartshorn called the Small Fry Rodeo Association, and we got here kind of in the middle of the season, but he won the saddle for his age group for that year. And so then he joined high school rodeo and went to the high school national finals when he was a sophomore, and actually was runner-up to the bull riding champion that year. His junior year, he got to go back again, and he won it that year. He was the high school national bull riding champion. And then his senior year, he qualified again to go to nationals, but he bucked off a one then and didn't even make the short round. And he was really down in the dumps and unhappy, and he told his dad he felt like he just let everybody down. And because we had friends and family that had driven clear to Douglas, Wyoming to watch him ride. But Clyde told him, said, Lane, as long as you tried your very hardest, you didn't let anybody down. And anyway, at those high school national finals, he met Tuff Hedeman for the first time, and they were rivals from the word go. Everybody talked about Tuff being the good bull rider from Texas and Lane being the good bull rider from Oklahoma. And so wherever they went, they really wanted to beat each other. They weren't too concerned about the rest of them, but they wanted to beat each other. But anyway, of course, later on they started traveling together, and they still were rivals, but they were truly as close as brothers or closer, when they traveled together. And Lane also met Kelly Kyle at those high school national finals, but they didn't start going together for quite some time. But anyway, so Lane graduated in 1982, and he had offers to go to college on a rodeo scholarship, but Lane was not a good student. He was dyslexic, and learning was really hard for him, and so he just didn't want to go to college. He just couldn't wait to join the PRCA and get on the road full time, and so that's what he did. And that first year, of course, he wanted to go to the national finals. Everybody wants to go to the national finals in the PRCA, but they take the top 15, and he was 16th that year. He also wanted to win Rookie of the Year because they give an award for Rookie of the Year, and he was runner-up for that. So, as all of you know, that's just part of it. You don't always win. But anyway, the next year he did go to the national finals, and then he started going with his Kelly Kyle, and in January of 1985 they got married and lived here for a while, lived in Quanah for a while, lived in Fort Worth for a while, different places. And like I say, Kelly rodeoed. She was a heck of a hand. She won more saddles and buckles than Lane ever had. But and they rodeoed together when they could, but Lane just had to pick up his bag and go. She had to haul a horse, and so they couldn't rodeo together all the time. But anyway, then in 1987 he won the PRCA Bull Riding Champion of the Year, and was just so tickled to do that, because his whole life he had talked about winning the world, and he never said, if I get to be a world champion. It was always, when I get to be a world champion, I'm going to do this or do that. And so he did, and then the very next year then, when he was the world's champion that year, Red Rock was named the Bucking Bull of the Year, and John Growney owned him, and he, but he was going to retire Red Rock because he was getting some age on him. But he came to Lane and he said, Red Rock's just such a great bull. I'd really like to do some kind of a finale. He said, what if we would do some matches between you and Red Rock? Well, Lane was just tickled to death to do that, because Red Rock had bucked him off twice, and both times it was at the finals. And one time it cost him winning the world. Anyway, you bull riders are kind of strange. If one bucks you off, that's the one you want to ride next time, because you just know you can. And anyway, Lane was tickled for those rides, because Freckles Brown was such an idol to him. He really looked up to Freckles, and as some of you may know, when the finals was in Oklahoma City, Freckles rode a bull up there called Tornado that had never been ridden before, and it was a history-making thing. And so Lane just thought it would be so neat that he might do something that might compare a little bit with what Freckles had done. And so Red Rock had been out, counting the 2 times Lane had bucked off, 311 times and never been ridden. But Lane rode him 4 out of 7 times in those matches, and I think that was almost as big a thrill to him as winning the world. But anyway, during that same time, he and Kelly were having some problems, and he had kind of mentioned it, and I'd prayed about it, and I just thought everything was going to be all right. But and Lane was real upbeat. He loved his fans. He loved to talk to little kids. He'd get down on one knee and eye level to them and visit with them and stuff, and was pretty happy-go-lucky most of the time. But he came in one time, and I could tell he was about as down as I had ever seen him. And he said, Kelly's left, and I'm afraid she's not coming back, and he was just so upset. And of course, you want to fix those kind of things for your kids, but there's just not a thing in the world you can do about it. And so anyway, we talked about it quite a little bit, and I finally went to bed, and Clyde and I both had gone to bed, and I just barely dozed off. And I think Lane had called Kelly or something and talked to her, he came to the bedroom door and he said, "Mom, would you come in here?" And I went in the living room and he was sitting there in one of the chairs that's still there and just crying his eyes out. And he said, "Kelly's gone. It's just not going to work out." And I knelt down there beside him and I said, "Lane, I don't know how this is going to turn out, but I said, you need to accept Jesus as your personal Savior, and then you have God with you no matter what happens." And he said, "Well, I've prayed about this, Mom." And I said, "I know you have, Lane, and I know you believe, but you've never accepted Jesus. You've never knelt down and said that you wanted Jesus to come into your life and ask him to forgive you of your sins." And he said, "Well, if I did that, I'd want to do it with Kelly." And I said, "Lane, Kelly's already a Christian. She can't do it for you. I can't do it for you. This is something you've got to do on your own." And so finally he said, "Okay, Mom, I want to do that." So I led him in the sinner's prayer right there in that chair, and I could almost immediately feel kind of a relief come over him. But I told him, I said, "Lane, these problems in your marriage hasn't happened overnight, and they're not going to get fixed overnight." I said, "We've got to just pray about it and just pray that God will change Kelly's heart," because I knew she had thought long and hard about it before she left Lane. And I said, "You've got to show her that you've changed and things are going to be different, And anyway, it rocked along, and God did put their marriage back together, because it would not have happened had God not been in it. But they did get back together, and probably that last year of Lane's life, they were probably happier than they had ever been. In fact, she got pregnant that fall, but she had a miscarriage, and so they never had any children. But so Lane was rodeoing really hard, and back then there just weren't big bucking bulls like there are today. I remember him calling home one time. He said he'd run 17 bulls in a row and had not won a dime, and he was just kind of discouraged. And he said something to me one time. He said, "I thought since I was a Christian things would be different." And I said, "Well, first of all, you've got to remember that God put your marriage back together. That's the most important thing. But I said, you've also got to realize that there's a devil out there. And as long as you're living kind of in the world, he don't bother you too much. But once you become a Christian, he comes at you with everything he's got, trying to make you doubt your salvation and whatever." And I said, you just got to keep praying and just hang in there, and things will get better. And so anyway, they, how July and August is when you're rodeoing. There's just rodeos everywhere, and they've been rodeoing hard. And so he went to Cheyenne. He rode his first 2 bulls, and he made the short round. And making the short round at Cheyenne is almost as good as going to the finals. I mean, it's just a really prestigious rodeo, and everybody wants to make the short round at Cheyenne. And so he was just tickled to death, and they had gone down to Texas to a rodeo, and then they were going up into Canada actually to a rodeo. The short round was on a Sunday, and so on Saturday they were at a rodeo up in Canada, and they had to drive all night to get back to Cheyenne. And Cody Lambert had stayed there and got a room for them so they'd have some place to come to. And sure enough, it was like 5 o'clock in the morning or something when they got in. And like I say, usually Lane was one of the first ones up, because Clyde taught him to get up and work hard and fix things, but that night he had driven all night because they had a new guy with them. I know it would have been Lane and Clint Bronger and Jim Sharp and Tuff. And anyway, there was some new bull rider in with them. And anytime there was somebody new with them, Lane just loved to sit up and talk to them and kind of see where they came from and what kind of background they had and so forth. And so anyway, he had driven most of the way, and they'd visited most of the night. And so when they got in and they all went to bed, the rest of them got up the next morning and went to eat breakfast, and Tuff actually brought Lane's breakfast back to the room to him, which was kind of unusual for Tuff. He wasn't as bad as the movie made him out to be, but he was a little rough around the edges, But anyway, so there was a couple of other things that happened that day that you wouldn't have thought anything about if it hadn't turned out the way it did. But Lane went around to get on his bull, and he forgot his glove, and he had to go back and get his glove. I mean, you just don't do that, so I don't know what that was about. And then when he got back on his bull and was just ready to ask for him, this was before cell phones, and there was a payphone behind the bucking chutes there at Cheyenne, and it rang. And Lane said, "Well, we better hurry, boys, that call will be for me," whatever that meant. Anyway, he came out and made a good ride, and it was muddy that day. He got off, and he knew this bull was kind of bad to hook. But he had told George Michael, he said, "I'm going to make a good ride, and I'm going to get away from him."
What was that bull's name?
Taking care of business. Yeah, taking care of business. And it was a long time before Clyde realized that was the name of the song. But anyway, he kind of stumbled in the mud and went down, and the bull came around and just hit him kind of with his horn and head on one side.
That was after he got off already.
Yeah, it was after the whistle blew and he got off in the mud. And it hit him in the ribs, and it broke some ribs, and he got up and waved to the EMTs because he knew he was hurt bad, I know. And as you watch pictures of that, you can see him take a few steps, and then his head goes down and he falls. And I think he was gone then. But anyway, they worked on him in the arena, they worked on him in the ambulance, they worked on him at the hospital. You know, they just didn't want to give up. But about 5 o'clock our time here, I was mowing the grass over at the yard and at the house, and Clyde's nephew was staying with us, and he came to the door, and I knew I was wanted on the phone. I went in, and it was Tough on the phone, and anytime Tough was on the other end of the line, I knew Lane had been hurt. I said, Tough, I know Lane's hurt. How bad is it? And he said, well, they just pronounced him dead. And of course, that's the hardest thing a parent can hear. And so Clyde was over here at the barn at the time, and we were raising dogs then in that south part of the barn. We had it full of dogs. And I knew when you walked in there, all those dogs started barking, and I didn't want to have to repeat what I had to tell him. So I came over and walked in the door and just yelled at him to come outside and told him what had happened. And his first response was it a plane wreck or a car wreck? Because, you know, we